Hi, I'm Doran Ellen Beldoton. I haven't made a video in quite a while. I've gone through a lot of changes in the interim, and I didn't want to make a video until things were settled. I became a vegan, and that helped me with my learning, actually, to get it up to a much higher level. I wanted my ideas to be solid before I presented them again. I lost 20 kilos, by the way, being vegan. But the most important thing to me is that my health is regained and that my learning got much higher. And I've been working very hard learning. I feel confident now that I've understood the things that I've been working on well enough to be able to share them, and I'd like to do that herein. One of the most misleading teachings in all major religions is the teaching that to be more godlike, we are supposed to be more spiritual. That the material world is essentially corrupt and corrupting, and in order to get closer to God and to be more like God, we're supposed to be spiritual. That completely erroneous teaching is very convenient for the people who know that the material world is where things are really happening, so that they can control it while we're busy being spiritual and therefore not having maximal effect on the physical world such that it serves our purposes, the purposes of people who love life, who love the creation, who want to share, whose intentions are good. We do not have to either amplify or emulate the transcendental. We don't have to perfect the transcendental. God uncreated doesn't need our help in that area. He's got that all down pat. Trying to amplify that which is uncreated doesn't make any sense. And really, God doesn't need our help on that level of God's being. Where God does need our help is here in creation. What creation essentially is God's ongoing attempt, ongoing project to create a world which is fit to be God's consort. The magical idea that God just sort of like snaps the fingers that it doesn't have and everything comes into existence effortlessly and immediately is completely erroneous. That's magical thinking. In fact, it's very, very hard work for God to look into itself and then translate that which it finds in itself into the physical world such that the physical world can exist and not be overwhelmed. There's a problem with the translation of God, the uncreated, into God, the created. Torah says that God created the world in 7 days. Well, the word yom, which means day, is numerically equivalent to the word dorot, which means generations. So we're not looking at something that happens in a day. We're looking at something that happens over generations. Generations both in the sense of our physical generations and the generation of reality. In other words, God is working very hard. It's not a simple thing for God the uncreated to become God the created and be able to mirror itself. The Hebrew word for material is chomer. An anagram of chomer is rechem, which means both womb and compassion. Another way of understanding chomer, the material world, is in a numerical equivalent, the word bimar'ah, which means in a mirror. The physical world is God looking at itself in a mirror. Actually, in many mirrors. Mirrors that magnify, mirrors that minimize, mirrors that zoom in here, zoom out there. It is God understanding itself in many mirrors. And like all mirrors, those mirrors have to be clean. The world that we are living in now does not reflect God's face clearly back to us because the material has become corrupted. That does not mean that the material is essentially corrupted. It is not. It has become corrupted as a result of how it's been interacted with. Material is not morally neutral. You cannot do anything you wish with material and have it return to its natural state, whatever that is, as though it has a default setting. It doesn't have a default setting. So every interaction with material is going to impact on that material and cause it to reflect back and to behave back to us in accordance with that behavior. And that effect is cumulative from generation to generation. Every wise thing that we have learned about the human psyche, about how to keep the human psyche healthy, and what causes pathology in the human psyche, is true of the physical world as well. If the physical world is compelled to take part in an act that is morally reprehensible, that is disgusting, that is degrading, that is debasing, the physical world is going to behave like someone who has been traumatized. It's going to be scarified by that, and it is going to react exactly the way our bodies, if they had a scar, would react. It's not as pliable, it's not as reactive, it's been desensitized. The physical world then can become calloused by being forced to do things that are negative. If, on the other hand, we ask the physical world to cooperate with us in performing acts of compassion, then the fact that chomer, which is material, and rechamim, which is compassion, mirror one another, and you're going to get an amplifying effect. When we invite the material world to act with us in compassion, to good purposes, with love, we are imprinting those qualities on the material world, and it will retain that. We can eventually get the material world up to such a high level that it no longer serves or reacts to those who have negative intentions. Unfortunately, we have not gotten the physical world up to that level because those who wanted to use the physical world for their own negative purposes told us to be spiritual. So while we were off running trying to be spiritual, those most impacting on the physical world were using it to negative purposes. In relation to God, the physical world is God's female consort. What happens to a woman who has been debased, who has been forced to do things that she does not want to do, who has been treated as though she's taken for granted, who has been abused, who's been raped? You're going to have a woman who is profoundly traumatized. And it will take her a while, even if she is acted with in love, to be able to peel away the various levels and layers of trauma until she begins to trust enough to react appropriately to love. The inanimate world is not necessarily inanimate, and neither is it without consciousness. The potential level of consciousness of the physical world is the highest level of the consciousness that we are willing to attribute to it. I'll say that again. The highest level of consciousness that the physical world is capable of is the level of consciousness that we are generous enough to attribute to it. Therefore, the physical world can be immensely intelligent. In fact, in the form of our bodies, it is. Right now, we are in a state in which our bodies are sluggish and put up resistance when we try to use them for good purposes, because we have inherited the physical material of our bodies from our ancestors. All of the acts that they performed are imprinted on the matter that they interacted with. And then we inherit that. And because we know that there were shockingly atrocious things that happened in the past, we have inherited that legacy. And so our bodies are very intelligent. They heal and they work with us, but they are deeply traumatized. And we have to undo that process. It is very, very important that we treat the world with gratitude and respect. Most people who tell you to treat the world with gratitude are telling you to do it, if you want more, then, be grateful for what you have. That's not the reason why we should really be grateful and show gratitude to the physical world. We should be showing gratitude to the physical world in order to encourage it, to say, with all the trauma that you have experienced and endured and been witness to, yet and still, you are still able to serve me as the chair I'm sitting on, as the clothes I'm wearing, as the house around me, as this camera and the internet and so forth and so on. Thank you for being able to do that. I appreciate that. And I know you can do even more. So it's not a question of me showing gratitude to the physical world because I want more stuff. It's because I'm encouraging the physical world to get higher. I guess I've basically given over the message that I wished to, and that is that we are able to get control of the physical world back from those who now control it, simply by interacting with it in such a way that it likes to interact with us more than it likes to interact with them. You see, the physical world will go where the love is. And right now, those who are grossly materialistic show more love and more appreciation for the physical world than do the people who are spiritual, who are ignoring it, who are denigrating it, who are thinking that in order to be godly they have to be anti-material. To get control back of the material world, we have to love the material world as much as the grossly material love the world, but to do it in a positive kind of way. There is no revolution that we can affect, no war that we can affect, or even demonstrations that we can affect that is going to wrest power away from those who are now controlling the physical world. Because if we interact in the physical world with anger, with resentment, with any kind of negativity at all, we are heaping the negativity upon the negativity and amplifying that. The way in which we get control back the physical world is by interacting with it in a loving kind of way. So I don't have to appropriate the UN building from those who own it and control it. I don't have to do that. All I have to do in order to get it to serve me is to send it higher levels of love and appreciation and gratitude than the people who think they own it because they have a piece of paper that says they have title to it. That means absolutely nothing. None of the ownership of material means anything whatsoever, because that is also a misuse of the physical world, the drawing up of the contracts and the signing them and all of that. The way in which we get control back, ownership back, is by loving it more, appreciating it more, utilizing it in a positive way, so that when you walk into a bank building, send the building the message, thank you for being here. Let's cooperate. When you go over a bridge, send the bridge the message, thank you for allowing me to get from one place to another. Let's cooperate. Let's work together. How would you like to work with me instead of working for whoever it is who built you to serve their purposes? How about serving a higher purpose? The cumulative effect of sending these kinds of messages to the physical world is going to change the entire nature of the physical world. We're witnessing an entire changing of the physical world. Everything that's happening around us shows us that the physical world now is changing and ready for change. Instead of allowing it to fall into chaos, we can use that breaking up of the old ways to our advantage. The way in which we act with the physical world is what it will mirror back to us. Thank you for listening. If there's a message in this video that you think is important and you want to share it, by all means, download the video. If you know how to do these things, fix the lighting. I don't know how to do all that stuff. I just ask you, please, if you repost this video on your sites, to attribute it to me and not to change the text of it in any way. Thank you for listening.